Welcome.
Ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between.
I don't know what this world is coming to.
Sir. Cognitive dissonance is the mental discomfort experienced when holding conflicting beliefs, ideas, or values, or when behavior contradicts beliefs. This discomfort can lead to attempts to reduce the dissonance by changing one of the conflicting elements, justifying the conflict, or avoiding conflicting information. Cognitive dissonance is a psychological theory developed by Leon Festinger, suggesting that individuals strive for internal consistency between their thoughts and actions. When there's a conflict between these elements, it creates psychological tension and discomfort. This tension motivates individuals to reduce the dissonance by finding ways to align their beliefs and behaviors. This could be introducing new beliefs or ideas that support the existing ones and reduce the conflict. This could be downplaying the significance of the conflicting beliefs or behaviors, or seeking out information that supports their existing beliefs and avoiding information that contradicts them. Today's tale is a tale of cognitive dissonance. Welcome to the Streets of Rage.
The right and the left fundamentally agree on the exact same things. For example, I work my ass off. Why should I have to give any of my hard-earned money to that lazy asshole? The problem is, we don't agree on who the lazy asshole is. The right believes that the lazy asshole is the single mother who's just trying to get by. The left understands that the real lazy asshole is the guy who just dropped cash on a mega yacht. The right and the left fundamentally agree on the exact same things. For example, the economy is bad, everything is too expensive, and I can't afford to live like this anymore. The problem is, we don't agree on whose fault it is. The right believes that it's Biden's fault. The left understands that it's actually the fault of the CEO who just got a $60 million bonus this year for increasing his company's bottom line by laying off 10,000 people and paying the rest of his employees minimum wage. The right and the left fundamentally agree on the exact same things. For example, this country is dangerous for our children and we have to protect them. The problem is, we don't agree on who the danger is. The right believes that the danger is the hardworking immigrant family who's just trying to make a life for themselves here, or the trans person living authentically and minding their goddamn business. The left understands that the real danger are the technocrats and the billionaire elite class who are hoarding all of our resources behind a paywall, who are consolidating wealth and power amongst themselves, who are destroying our planet and chipping away at our human rights every single day. The right and the left fundamentally agree on the exact same things, and unless and until we can agree that the problem has never been the black person or the queer person or the godless person or the poor person, that the problem all along has always been the filthy rich person who laughs all the way to the bank while they watch us suffer. Until we can agree on that, we are never going to be able to improve our struggle. Class solidarity is the only way through this.
You know, America has been an absolute mess ever since Donald Trump got back into office, and this last week was no different. Going back to June 6th, ICE ramped up their raids across LA, and dozens were detained, and many of them without warrants. From the fashion district to Home Depots to a bunch of different regular 9-to-5 jobs, ICE was just showing up and detaining people. And it's funny because, as right-wing media will tell you, these people that they're detaining are illegal immigrants who are lazy and who are riding on the coattails of government assistance. But it's amazing that ICE partnered with the IRS to locate where a bunch of these people were working, and they snatched them from their jobs, which is, again, odd because I thought these people were lazy and were living off of government assistance, but you pick them up from their jobs. People of LA were impacted and distraught because many of these people who are getting picked up, you know, these are family members, these are co-workers, these are kids that their children go to school with. And ICE, one by one, is just grabbing people off of the streets and taking them to unknown locations. So kudos to the citizens of LA who finally had enough, and they started filling the streets and protesting and demanding that ICE let these people go. And the police did what the police is known to do. They escalated the situation with flashbangs and rubber bullets and all kinds of utter chaos. And this is where the dissonance begins. The people protesting the dissonance is visceral. We were taught that America is a land of liberty, but we're watching liberty stolen in broad daylight. A lot of these people being detained are not being allowed due process. And due process, as it is defined in the Constitution, is the fundamental right for both citizens and non-citizens to be protected against arbitrary government decisions and to ensure fairness in legal matters. These people are not going through due process. ICE is grabbing people seemingly at random. They're not asking for ID. They're not asking for proof of anything. They're just grabbing these people and dragging them away to unknown locations. And this is why a lot of Americans on the right side of history, our belief in justice has been shattered because we're watching these people detained without cause. This is supposed to be America, the land of the free, but for who? Meanwhile, on the other side, the political right, dissonance continues to brew as Fox News is showing them videos of cars burning and broken windows and teens yelling in cops' faces. And that's the part of the story that they're showing. They're not showing what led up to those incidents. They're showing what happened after. And so to those people, the citizens aren't fighting injustice. They're criminals, just exploiting chaos. LA is being taken over by criminals and illegal immigrants. And so while the right wing in Fox News is only showing the right one side of the equation, it's only understandable why that side is like, yeah, you got to bring force. These aren't our neighbors. These are threats to America as we know it. It is again amazing how the left and the right, we both want the same thing. We want America to strive. We want America to be great. But the reason why America is not where it's supposed to be, we're on complete opposite spectrums of what the culprit is. It's funny because they would show videos of people at these protests holding up Mexican flags, and people on the right were furious.
Hey, so I got a question. Why are the people in LA waving Mexican flags?
So when they wave the Mexican flag, it's a problem, but when you wave your Confederate flags, it's heritage. Got it.
Yeah, we as American citizens cannot hold up a Mexican flag to show that we are in support of the Mexican American community who is going through this situation in America right now. But your side is able to continue to hold up the Confederate flag, the flag of the traitors of the United States who tried to destroy America as we know it, because America had the audacity to say, maybe we should stop slavery. Cognitive dissonance. Kudos to Wyatt Russell, who is the son of Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn, who had something to say to the police out there at the LA protest.
Feel tough with your assault rifles and your sticks? You should be standing here with us.
Stand with us.
You're on the wrong side of history. We know you got a job to do, but you took an oath to the Constitution, not to the fascists in the White House. Think about what you're doing now. Think about what this means. Coming into our community. Peaceful fucking community. People working their jobs. They send in men in military fatigues. Weapons of war into our communities. And you stand here and you allow it. I am sick and tired of it. You should be sick and tired of it. You think any of these people in the White House sending you these commands give a fuck about you? Not one of them do. They laugh at you. Our president laughs at you. He calls you fools. He said the people who died overseas in the military were chumps. That's who you're defending right now. Every last... Think about your place in history, ladies and gentlemen. Ask yourself when you wake up tomorrow. I don't know if you have kids. Ask yourself the future you want for your children. Is it this? You can answer me. Is it this? Do you feel good about this? You're tough behind your fucking masks and your fatigues and with your weapons, but how do you feel on the inside? This is our fucking community, and we will fight for it if we have to. Whose streets? Whose streets? Whose streets?
Our streets!
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 And for those of you who say, oh, they're just doing their job. Yeah, so was the Gestapo. There's no excuses for this. Now, while the protests were going on and you had the LAPD out there, from all accounts that we were getting, the police were keeping things in control. Now, of course, there are a couple bad apples. There were a couple people who threw concrete bricks. There are a couple people who set cars on fire, but that more so were the outliers. That wasn't the great majority of people. The great majority of people were out there peacefully protesting and letting their thoughts be heard. But of course, Trump did not see that as a situation of peace. He saw it as people standing up and going against him, and he labeled these people as animals and the foreign enemy at a speech in Fort Bragg, where he essentially talked about the immigration enforcement raids, and he vowed to liberate the West Coast. And he used this as an opportunity to say that he was going to go ahead and bring out the National Guard and the U.S. Army to further, quite frankly, escalate the situation. And it's rather amazing the way that they are gaslighting the country on a national scale, because many of the people of the Trump administration started having the audacity to call the protesters in L.A. insurrectionists, which is amazing considering that we had an actual fucking insurrection where you had the rioters during January 6th storm the fucking Capitol with the enemy's flag, and all of those people were pardoned.
I'm glad the president has a strong hand in this.
Mr. Speaker, you guys are condemning the violent protesters in LA. Is it hypocritical given the president pardoned the violent protesters on January 6th?
Look, no, I think there's a clear distinction between those two. We've seen what's happened in LA in the early 90s and in other times when these things get out of control and they burn whole city blocks down and shut the place down. You have to stay on top of that. You cannot let it get out of control. And I think federalizing the National Guard was important. I think if Marines are necessary to maintain order, we have to do what is.
So what's the difference? You said there's a distinct. What's the difference between the violent protesters on January 6th?
Everybody wants me to relitigate January 6th. I'm not going to do that. There's a very clear distinction between the two. The people who broke the law and destroyed property met with the proper consequences on that. That's what we're trying to be intellectually consistent about this.
What sort of authorities do you think the Marines should have there on the ground? What sort of authorities?
Maintain peace and protect property. They're protecting federal property and personnel, and that is a very appropriate and necessary thing to do, and I applaud the President for doing it.
Thank you, sir.
Now, as the day progressed, things started to get even more tense, as I don't know if the LAPD got some type of warning or some type of orders from higher ups. I have no idea what exactly happened behind the scenes, but the LAPD decided to take it to another level as reporters got shot at, reporters got detained. Tear gas was thrown out, and just utter chaos erupted as we moved into the night.
After hours of standing off, this situation has now rapidly deteriorated. The LAPD moving in on horseback, firing rubber bullets at protesters, moving them on through the heart of LA. You just shut the fuck up.
You okay?
I'm good.
Flyers and posters saying
CNN?
It's time to escalate.
Wait 1 second, John.
To,
hold on.
yeah,
I want to. Jason,
Yep.
what's going on? I hear you. Am I seeing Jason Carroll being? What happened, Jason?
I am being detained. I am being detained, Laura. I'm not being arrested. Correct, officers?
Did you hear what he told you?
No.
We're letting you go, but you can't come back.
Okay.
Because then if you come back, then you go. We're good right here.
Okay.
Okay, please?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, officer.
Take care. You too. Nice to meet you.
Good luck. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
What happened, Jason?
If you guys can still hear me, what happened was, yes.
I'm Chris with the New York Times. We got video of you guys.
Oh, you did?
If you need it later,
thank you.
call New York Times.
I appreciate that.
I can hear you still, Jason. What's happening?
So here's what happened, Laura. The officer, I was called over, and the officer told me to put my hands behind my back. I said, am I being arrested? He said, you were being detained. I was walked out of the area. They took down my information.
Oh, I'm losing his IFB right now. I can't hear you, Jason. John Miller.
Centers in my practice of 40 years, but everything has changed now.
Attorney Nieto, we're going to let you go on this note. Thank you so much for giving us a few minutes of your time. We're going to have to move down to downtown LA as things seem to be picking up down there. Once again, we thank you for your time. Let's get to Lauren Posen, who is down there. Lauren, what are you seeing and hearing? It's looking like things are getting chaotic.
A large crowd of law enforcement come out.
We have, oh my God, we have tear gas. We have fireworks going off. Tear gas is in the air. People are dispersing. I can't see anything. I'm sorry, I can't. You told me you got caught up in the tear gas as well. Describe what happened to you.
Oh, just tasted a little tear gas. Tasted like fascism.
The definition of fascism is a far-right, ultra-nationalist political ideology characterized by authoritarian power concentrated in a single leader or elite group, suppression of dissent, opposition, and individual freedoms. Military violence is used as tools of control. You'll have national or racial purity myths, often scapegoating minorities. You have corporate government alliances to maintain social order and economic control. At its core, fascism is anti-democratic. It rejects diversity of thought, and it puts into place institutional checks. That sounds exactly like the Trump administration and any and all of these things that they were doing with Project 2025.
You're one of the authors, you're on the advisory board, you work for Heritage, you're basically January, February, and March in the Project 2025 calendar, right? But you were asked this weekend about it, and you said, no, the administration isn't following Project 2025. So just, I'll go through lightning rounds, I only have 2 minutes. Just tell me, coincidence or not? In Project 25, abolishing the Department of Education, you guys are doing that. Is that a coincidence?
The president's view.
Coincidence or not? Coincidence or not? That's all you got to ask. Okay, I'll go through the rest. Any diversity, equity, and inclusion?
The president's agenda is
shifting FEMA costs to the states. Targeting PBS and the National Public Radio. Freezing federal assistance. Restricting gender-affirming care. Revoking security clearances. Stripping civil servants of employment protections.
Project 2025, page by page.
Vaccines, banning transgender people from the military, a hiring freeze, withdrawing from the World Health Organization, sending active duty troops to the southern border, limiting refugee admissions, rescinding temporary protected status designations, capping indirect costs for university-based research, requiring disclosures of foreign gifts to universities, apparently not funds for presidents, asserting the president's power to remove federal officials, and targeting NOAA. Were those all just coincidences that they happened to be in Project 25 and they were just in the back pocket of the president since November?
Yeah. The president has never been more of a promises made, promises kept president than we've ever had in history. He has run on an agenda. He was very clear on that agenda.
No, he wasn't.
That agenda.
No, he wasn't.
Worked for his agenda.
You're a fucking moron. It's the country's agenda.
Sounds like fascism to me. Now, fascism is just a political ideology. I think what the big ticket item of what Project 2025 and those who support it are looking to do is to get away from a democracy in America and move over to authoritarianism. Now, governments who switch over to this style of government use violence to be able to pass the laws that they need to pass to then dismantle the current government structure and move into authoritarianism. And none of these governments ever announce themselves outright. Like, they're not going to tell you that, hey, this is what we're about to do. What they typically do is they manufacture crises and respond with force and condition the public to accept that less freedom is needed in exchange for order across the country. Now, they'll create or exploit a crisis. You know, immigration waves and terrorism or civil unrest are labeled as existential threats. Leaders will frame these events as proof that the system needs stronger control. They dehumanize a target group. You know, the blame is placed on a vulnerable group, be it immigrants or activists or journalists or minorities or queer folk. The propaganda portrays these people as violent or criminal or anti-American. And then they deploy state violence. Police and military are unleashed against civilians, raids, curfews, mass arrests. Protesters are labeled as rioters even when they're being peaceful. And surveillance expands under the justification of safety. They undermine democratic institutions. Courts are bypassed or packed. Opposition voices are jailed, harassed, or delegitimized. Laws are changed to reduce voting rights, which increase executive power or criminalize those who dissent. And the public becomes numb to this brutality. The media either supports the regime or they are silenced. Citizens are forced into this cognitive trap that if they speak up, they will be next. Now, some of the real world indicators that the country that you're a part of is starting to have a fascist drift and lean towards authoritarianism would be police used to suppress protests instead of protect citizens. Leaders discrediting elections or calling to delay them. Militarization of domestic policy, be that the National Guard or Marines in cities. Executive orders bypassing legislation, and framing journalists and whistleblowers as enemies. Now, if none of that, rings a bell, you haven't been paying attention to the last 20-something minutes of this podcast. Fascism does not arrive all at once. It creeps in through fear, through silence, and through force. And when the government uses violence on their own people or passes law or suppress rights, they aren't protecting democracy. they're dismantling it. And if it's one thing you can count on Trump, because he did it before and he is doing it again, Trump is going to continue to incite violence to get his agenda in place.
There actually is one way the LA protests are like the January 6th insurrection. Trump incited the violence both times. And that says a lot about how he maintains power and control. Trump's rally on January 6th has largely been cited as the inflection point to where supporters got violent. He encouraged them to fight like hell and to march to the Capitol after lying about the election being stolen. And then we know what happened. Remember, he was impeached for a second time by the House for the incitement of the insurrection, even though he was later acquitted by the Senate. So while Trump himself didn't storm the Capitol, his hands stirred the pot. The same goes for the LA protests. Despite what we now see in mass media, they didn't start violent. They mostly started with protests against mass ICE raids and gatherings around warehouses where ICE was reported, aside from a few isolated incidents which local authorities said the police could handle. Things took a turn after Trump escalated the situation by calling protesters animals and foreign enemies and threatened more force and violence via military involvement. And that's how peaceful protests turned into this, because he intensified and inflamed the situation. Trump is the common denominator because violence is how he gets power. It comes right out of the authoritarian playbook. The only difference in how he handles these situations is the aftermath, i.e. if you're pardoned or arrested and deported. Violent remarks against progressives rally his base and distract from problems real people face, like the current big ugly bill. His violence also demonizes his opponents and attempts to scare protesters into silence. Either way, it's creating more division, which is authoritarianism 101. Keep us turning against each other while Trump and his rich friends create a dictatorship.
Yeah, and you could always trust in Trump and his rich friends to play by their own rules. Because while Trump felt it was necessary to bring out the National Guard in LA, he had a different opinion on the National Guard and sending them out to cities back when Biden was in office.
I promised 4 years ago at the Republican convention, I'm going to restore law and order in this country.
Except in Democrat-run cities. Look, we have laws. We have to go by the laws. We can't move in the National Guard. I can call insurrection, but there's no reason to ever do that, even in a Portland case. We can't call in the National Guard unless we're requested by a governor.
And Governor Gavin Newsom definitely did not make the call. But honestly, we should have been listening to Governor Newsom because he was right about Trump all along.
He's a stone-cold liar. I respect the presidency. I've tried to have an open hand with him, tried to work with him. You can't work with Donald Trump. You can only work for him. And I will not. I refuse to work for Donald Trump.
You know, it's amazing. It's almost as if the writing was on the wall. It's almost as if all this information was out there for public consumption. And it's almost as if all of this could have been avoided. You know, it's almost as if Kamala Harris was right, but you didn't care because you didn't want to hear it from a black woman.
He said he will target and punish those who disagree with him or refuse to bend to his will. He calls these Americans the enemy within and says that he would use the American military to go after American citizens. Journalists whose stories he doesn't like. Nonpartisan election officials who refuse to cheat by finding a few extra votes for him. Judges who insist on following the law instead of following him. It is for reasons like these that General Mark Milley, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Donald Trump's top general, has called Trump, and I quote, fascist to the core.
All of this could have been avoided. Well, back to the LA protests.
You are being manipulated. What you are watching in LA is political theater to justify a crackdown on blue cities and states. A crackdown that was always planned. What we're seeing in LA is not an isolated or organic incident. It is something Donald Trump and Stephen Miller have been planning to do across the country, New York, Chicago, Houston, Atlanta, because this isn't about safety. It's about control. The force we are seeing being unleashed on Los Angeles, the city where I live, by the way, is not an honest reaction to a developing situation, but an instigation and then justification of something pre-planned. Before the administration caused this problem by sending ICE in to terrorize our communities, to invade our city and deny people their right to due process, essentially initiating extrajudicial kidnappings of people and horrific cruel separations of children from their parents, LA was doing just fine. We live in community with one another. Over 35% of our population are immigrants, with 64% of them coming from Latin America, primarily Mexico, which of course makes sense because California used to belong to Mexico. Los Angeles itself is a Spanish name. Our streets, our culture, it's all very Latin. So to claim that our neighbors and our friends and our families are criminals and drug dealers and rapists when you are ambushing people at immigration courts to arrest mothers and Home Depots to round up handymen and elementary schools to take children away is outrageous. And when things are outrageous, of course people are going to protest. That is our legal right in this country when we are upset with the actions of our government. What we are seeing in LA is the response to the lack of due process for people that we know and care about. And until law enforcement got violent, the people were mostly peaceful. Now you have the federal government calling us rioters and insurrectionists and criminals. Has there been some vandalism and violence? Yes, but no more than a World Series celebration parade, and certainly way less than January 6th, which was an actual insurrection with violence against the police where everyone was pardoned for their patriotism. But here in LA, despite the fact the LAPD and the Sheriff's Department were clear that they did not want or need help, no external law enforcement, and the governor was adamant the National Guard, which is under his jurisdiction, not be called in, 4,000 National Guard have been deployed here, along with the U.S. military. The Marines, no less. All on Los Angeles streets. For what? What are they going to do? Because they're not here to quell protest. The Marines weren't trained for that. These guys are trained killers, not crowd control. This is a show of force to make a point. The troops in LA, the National Guard, the Marines, the helicopters with their missiles flying between our buildings downtown, the troops with their tanks that will be on display in Washington this weekend, this is all a move towards a different form of government, a move from democracy and rule of law to authoritarianism and a strongman style of government, where Donald Trump gets to be Vladimir Putin or Viktor Orban or Kim Jong-un. This was always the plan of the Trump Project 2025 administration. LA is just the excuse. And what better way to prove your power than by dominating a blue city in a blue state? Do not be mistaken. The language being used around this event is deliberate. Stephen Miller knows what he's doing when he uses the word insurrection. J.D. Vance is using insurrection language. Kristi Noem is calling LA a city of criminals. Mike Johnson said Gavin Newsom should be tarred and feathered. A massive, horrific crime, by the way. The president has called for the mayor and the governor's arrest. What they are doing is called papering the record, so that later they can justify the extreme actions they already planned to take. The LAPD was handling these protests just fine, but the Trump-Miller regime needed a justification to invoke the Insurrection Act and take full control of the country. And this is the opportunity they've been waiting for. It's just an opportunity they instigated. So we have to make sure they don't get what they want. They don't get their photo op of bad behavior. They don't get to wag the dog and make us the criminals they want us to be. Our city is not rioting. We're not insurrectionists. 1 in 10 Americans lives in California. LA County has a bigger population than 44 states in this nation. LA is not blue. It is red, white, and blue. LA is America. And make no mistake, Donald Trump is at war with America. He wants to destroy America. He's just using LA to do it. So we could really use the country's support because he's certainly not going to stop with us.
And if it's one thing you can count on Fox News, it is always going to do everything it can to spin the narrative. And they are using this opportunity to highlight the chaos that is in California and how if we don't do something about it, this is what the entire nation will turn into. And they're saying this to scare people because Fox News, the people who watch Fox News live off of feelings and not facts. They don't care what the facts are. They care how they feel. And by seeing all these minority groups together and to see them stand up against the police, it scares them. It scares them to the core. Because quite frankly, a lot of these people know how minorities have been treated in this country from day one, and they fear that if they lose control, that minorities will treat them the way that they have treated minorities since the inception of America. So Fox News is using this opportunity to spin the narrative and say that if you all don't get up and vote during the midterms, that this will happen to your city. But it's funny because if you actually listen to the words that they say, they tell on themselves quite often, because as they just did on Fox News, they said that if the right loses the midterm elections, we might start to see some investigations happen.
This is what you're voting for. And if Republicans lose the midterms, and a year from now, a year and a half from now, this is going to start blowing up everywhere. And House Democrats will begin nonstop investigations into Trump world. And if Hakeem Jeffries is Speaker of the House, he'll encourage more of this stuff with his pronouncements about Trump the dictator.
You know, Fox News does a real good job of priming their fan base for what's to come. They have their news show based off of entertainment and based off of playing on the fan base's fear, because again, like I said, they focus on feelings over facts, and they do all these things to provoke fear into the listeners, the people who are watching their show. And then they drop a little bit of truth in it, so then later on the people could be like, oh yeah, they warned us about this. They warned us about this. And I think the writing is on the wall that some investigations are going to start to happen, as we have seen with these lawsuits, or this lawsuit in particular that's popping up about the election results out in Rockland. Now, we talked about it a little bit last week, but I think there's a little bit more to dive into this week too.
Last Thursday, the New York Supreme Court ruled that a case that is challenging the results of the 2024 election will be able to move forward into discovery. And funny enough, this case originally had nothing to do with the presidency. Lawsuits primarily being brought by Diane Sayre. She's an independent candidate for the New York State Senate. If you're MAGA, before you burst into tears, anyone in the country is allowed to challenge the results of the election. You guys sued 62 times after the 2020 election, and 61 of those were almost immediately thrown out because there was absolutely nothing supporting them. See, Diane partnered with an independent, nonpartisan third-party group called Smart Legislation that looks at election data. All of their issues are laid out in the lawsuit and in their supporting documents. You can go read all of this. Her initial question was about the number of votes that she got, because she did not feel this was adding up. So she went district by district and got signed, sworn affidavits from people that voted for her, and those affidavits do not match the actual vote total. In District 39, she has 9 sworn statements from folks that said they voted for her. There are 5 votes that were actually counted. District 62, which is Exhibit B, she had 5 sworn affidavits. There are 3 votes actually counted. Second part of this, they glanced at the presidential data and things started looking a little funky, like in District 35 when the Democratic candidate here, Kristen Gillibrand, got 331 votes, so 79.38% of the total there. And Kamala Harris got 0 votes. Now, I know y'all are the facts over feelings side, right? So we're going to push our feelings aside and understand this is statistically unlikely. It's statistically unlikely that in District 55, Kristen here got 909 votes. This is 95.58% of the votes. And Kamala was able to pull in 2 votes, 0.20% of the vote. What's funny is when you Google Rockland County, this lawsuit is not easy to find. News is there. A couple people have reported about this. I find it very strange how much you have to actually fucking dig. Now, the presidential stuff plays a lot into the drop-off percentage, which I did a full analysis of literally the week after the election is what this video that this comment is from. I said, hey, this is all pretty fucking strange. People laughed at me and called me crazy. We are now circling back to this because this group did the same thing. This lawsuit was filed, I believe, December 4th of last year. Now, this data is from a separate analysis from Smart Elections. None of this makes any sense. This is not statistically likely once again. You people can scream and cry and shake your fist at the air, but something happened here, right? And it all goes back to this woman's votes, and her lawsuit is moving forward. There is a court date for September 22nd at 9:30 a.m. They're in discovery. They're putting together a list of election documents, information they want to see, and they're putting together a list of people they want to depose. If this moves forward as it looks like it will, we will get a full hand recount in Rockland County, New York, and we will see what actually happened. And if you guys are right, I'm sure there's absolutely nothing to see there, right?
This goes back to our discussion last week where you had Donald Trump leading up to the election telling his fan base at his rallies, don't worry about it, we have enough votes. This goes back to Elon saying that if he had something to do with it, you know, he wouldn't allow people to vote through voting machines because it's very easy to move a line and alter what the actual results are. And again, if you just listen to narcissists as they speak, they will tell on you. And it's amazing to think that, and especially with how close the race was in the end, it's amazing to think maybe Kamala didn't actually lose. And what is further interesting is that you are starting to have some reputable news publications come out and start to hypothesize and discuss this.
If the public is seeing this article from the Economic Times, that means the regime has seen it too. It actually probably means they've known about it for a while, and it would be kind of convenient for them to all of a sudden be trying to stop civil unrest. You don't know what I'm talking about. The Economic Times released a story today saying that voting machines were absolutely tampered with in 2024. It didn't just happen in Rockland County. It didn't just happen in one state or two. It happened in a lot of states. This is why I kept saying anybody who has been speaking on the fact that this contest does not make sense, it was never coming from a place of conspiracy. All you had to know was basic math. Now, 6 months later, 7 months later, all the things that people kept calling us crazy for saying is coming full circle and being looked at. Now, many of you will sit at home and say this changes nothing. The results are the same. But I keep telling you, this conversation needs to be had. Even if those results don't change, this type of stuff needs to be looked into. It needs to be sorted through with a fine-tooth comb, because we are talking about our actual voting process in this country. How we, the people, choose who makes the decisions for us. I don't know about you, but I want that process to be as above board as possible. So when I see articles like this, I am excited, because now I know that people are looking at the data. You should look at it too.
And I think this is very important because, you know, for one, if our democracy was compromised, that definitely needs to be looked into. And the people who had the audacity to interfere in our elections need to be held accountable. That's, you know, first and foremost. The other thing that this, you know, just kind of reminds me of is, again, going back to the rallies. And if you listen to a narcissist, they will tell you, they will tell on themselves, you know, 100% of the times. One of the other things that Trump kept bringing up during his rallies was, you know, to the people who were going out to vote, he kept saying that they only had to do it one more time. He said, all you have to do is vote one more time, and we're going to fix it so good you'll never have to vote again. And that stood with me and that resonated with me. And going back to Project 2025 and all the stuff that as fascism is starting to rise, and as we see that Trump's administration is trying to move over to authoritarianism approach, it leads me to believe, with pattern recognition, is that is what he was referring to, is for Trump to get in office, for them to pass Project 2025, for them to do these sweeping changes to the U.S. government as we know it, to bring out the police and the military on its own citizens, and to use Fox News and these right-wing publications to spin this narrative that the country is utterly out of control. And they would use all of that to then convince the general public that they need less freedom, so then Trump and his people could place more order within the country. And then that would lead to Trump's administration owning the United States and us getting away from any type of democratic leadership where people are actually voting. And the writing is on the wall to the people who are actually fucking paying attention to what's going on. And kudos to the worldwide day of protest that was dubbed No Kings Day of Defiance, which was held on June 14th, which coincided with Trump's 79th birthday and also coincided with the U.S. Army's 250th anniversary and the official military parade that happened out in Washington, D.C. Now, No Kings was organized by a broad coalition of grassroots groups, labor unions, and civil rights outfits and educators that basically brought together anywhere from 5 million to 11 million protesters across more than 2,000 U.S. cities. And as I mentioned, there were several international locations where people got up and got out and protested. Their message was reject authoritarianism. It was to reject this military spectacle that's going on, to reject these ICE raids and the aggressive use of executive power that the Trump administration is levying nowadays. Now, these protests, like I said, happen across the entire United States, from San Francisco to Houston to Philly to Denver, and as were the LA protests before the LAPD and the National Guard got involved. These were peaceful, celebratory, and unifying protests that featured music and families and just all kinds of people just coming together to let their voices be heard that enough is enough. Out in Houston, there was roughly about 15,000 people that joined in a nonviolent march, and they had signs that said things like "See violence, sit down." In St. Paul, Minnesota, following a politically motivated shooting, because unfortunately there was a situation where, and more news is coming. That's part of the reason why I'm not fully covering it this week. I'll talk about it next week when more news come. But there was a elective official out in Minnesota that got assassinated by what initially sounds like may have been a Trump supporter. But like I said, more to come. I'm gonna focus on quality reporting and not, being the first to, release a news story, if you will. So we talk about that more next week. But out in St. Paul, Minnesota, they had protests that were postponed but then later resumed under some heightened security because, again, if you have one assassination attempt happen, you don't know if it's one person, you don't know if it's a group. It's a lot going on. But back to No Kings out in Los Angeles. The LA crowds began at City Hall, drawing around 25,000 participants across a dozen of different Southern California locations. There was a demonstration formed at the Federal Building where protesters chanted "shame" at Marines and National Guard troops. Gotta love the shame chant. LAPD declared an unlawful assembly, deploying flashbangs, tear gas, foam bullets, and rubber rounds after reports of rocks, bottles, and fireworks and other projectiles aimed at officers. But again, it's always one of those things that is concerning because it is very easy as law enforcement to get violent with people and then just say that, oh, well, they threw a rock. Oh, they did this, Apparently 6 protesters were injured out there in LA. 7 LAPD officers suffered some injuries, and there is a curfew in place from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. and the National Guard and the Marines are still out there kind of keeping an eye on Los Angeles and fucking with the U.S. citizens in every possible way that they can. The No Kings protest had a couple different themes, symbolic alignment, the timing of the protest being on Trump's birthday, and also with the whole situation of this stupid ass fucking military parade that he was doing. It was great for them to align on that day, and quite frankly, it made the Trump administration look like an absolute joke, because several of the videos that are circulating online, I think that there was maybe 10 to 20,000 people who showed up for the parade. While meanwhile, across the fucking world, more than 10 million people stood up in defiance to Trump. And so I definitely think it made his military parade look like a joke. I know in his head, he, saw what Russia and the Soviet Union and what North Korea had did in the past. And that is what he is attempting to do, but it did not quite work in that fashion. And kudos to the American people for standing up against what is happening with these ICE raids, because again, yes, there is a problem with illegal immigration in America, but the way to solve it is not grabbing everyone who is black and brown and deporting them. That is not the proper way to address this situation. But the No Kings protests, it matters because, again, you have millions of people who are saying no to centralized power, no to militarized politics. And the slogan No Kings is a direct statement against having a dictatorship leadership, which, again, aligned with the military parade, because in the history of world history, the only people to ever have military parades on their birthdays were fucking dictators. Like, the writing is on the wall what Trump thinks that he is, and you that don't see it are either deaf, dumb, or blind. Like, there's no nicer way to say these things. Like, it's insane.
I think about that old clip of Joe Rogan, and he's like, dude, you ever look at a video of LA from a helicopter and it just looks like a virus? Describing humanity as like a virus.
Yeah.
So that whole right-wing movement is like super, like, I don't even look at it as like racist and I just look at it as anti-human.
I don't think they even can begin to see themselves as racist because they don't value any person enough.
Yeah, and they don't feel a connection to what the whole of this is.
We're on a fucking rock going fucking a million miles an hour through space, dude.
So who cares if I say a slur, bro?
Nothing's fucking real, dude. Say the R word, dude. You could beat your wife, dude. Like, watch fucking open butthole porn, dude. Eat cereal out of someone's asshole, dude. Nothing's real.
When you say open butthole porn,
you could dim the truth in people's minds, but their hearts will still seek out the light. That's our thesis today. But this is also a warning to all of you, because what we're witnessing in America isn't just a political movement. It's a mass experiment in cognitive dissonance, and MAGA is at the head of this movement. Over the past decade, MAGA has done something more brilliant and more dangerous than most of us are willing to admit. They didn't just win votes, they infiltrated subcultures. They saw the loneliness, fear, and anger bubbling in the corners of American identity and offered itself as the place where all that pain could find protection, no matter how contradictory or conspiratorial the logic needed to be. They move like a virus with a strategy into conspiracy theory circles like QAnon in the beginning, where people were already rejecting mainstream information. Then they moved into Christian churches where prophecy met patriotism, and Jesus started to sound like a gun-wielding American nationalist who did not care about the poor or about immigrants. They moved into gun culture because who cares about the truth when you get to bust your gun? They moved into incel spaces where lonely men are told their suffering is the fault of feminism, trans people, and wokeness. And they moved into the podcast universe where you got voices like Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn who pretend to be moderates by giving you right-wing red pills. And through it all, MAGA said and made sure that one thing was clear. You are not wrong. You are not crazy. You are under attack, and we are your only protection. And this is how identity fusion happens. People don't just support MAGA, they become MAGA. Their faith, their masculinity, their race, their victimhood, it's all fused with that red hat and with Trump. So even when the lies are obvious and the crimes get televised and the contradictions are just undeniable, they cannot turn away, because rejecting that lie would mean rejecting themselves and rejecting their peace that is within their new home that is protecting them. MAGA didn't just unify conservatives. It absorbed every disaffected fringe and made them believe that they were the new oppressed majority. It was fucking brilliant. Every Christian, every gun owner, podcaster, incel, conspiracy theorist, each just became another string into this symphony of grievance, just orchestrated to sound like justice, but built entirely on emotional distortion. This is cognitive dissonance on a mass scale. Believing you're the victim while cheering for oppression. Worshiping the truth while refusing evidence. And claiming patriotism while threatening democracy. The only way to make that math work in your head is you have to unplug from reality. It's crazy because, you know, we always thought that conservatism was going to die off with the older generation, but MAGA was smart and they figured out how to gain new members and those who felt like outcasts in this new diverse world post-Obama's presidency, when America had the audacity to let a black family run the country and allow gay people to get married. That's the magic and the danger of the internal sunshine of the clueless mind. When a movement tells you to forget what you know, feel what you fear, and never question the source. You don't need to erase memory. You just need to override it. And so today's America isn't just politically divided, it's psychologically split between those who can sit with discomfort and take in new information and those who have been promised comfort through delusion. Through white supremacy, through MAGA. The sunshine may feel warm, the slogans may feel safe, but underneath that glow, there's a cold hard truth clawing to be remembered, because quite frankly, they're using your fears so you could join this fight to oppress the disenfranchised, because when they are done, you've already helped them to develop the playbook that they are going to use to oppress you. Until next time, man.
Do you ever get the feeling that everything in America is completely screwed? Listen, we're all exhausted. We're all barely hanging on. That's just what happens when you see and hear too much. But remember one thing, this isn't the end. It can't be. I mean, this endless grind, the corporate doublespeak, the debt, the fear of one bad day sending it all crashing down. This has to be rock bottom, right? And surviving it, pushing through it, that's the whole point. Quitting won't make you free. Living will. Fighting will. So hold the line. Hold yourself together. I get the cynicism, the burnout. But why am I here, saying this? And why are you still listening? Because it's time. It starts with us. Not the politicians, the executives, the talking heads. United States. The ones who need change the most. I have to believe, down to my bones, that the world is starving for something real. If you listen, you can hear it everywhere. And maybe, just maybe, the same revolution I've been aching for has already begun. With our symphony of thoughts,